Bukharian Jews, also known as Central Asian Jews, Bukharis, Israel, or Yehudi, represent an ethno-confessional and ethno-linguistic subgroup of the Jewish diaspora. The term Bukharian Jews applies to all Jews living in Central Asia, although historically they lived not only in Bukhara, but also in other cities of the region. Historians offer several versions of the origin of this name. One links it to Tamerlane, who after capturing Bukhara resettled several hundred families in Samarkand. Tamerlane called the new Jewish community in Samarkand Bukharian, which could have become the basis for this term. Another version explains the origin of the name by the fact that when Turkestan was annexed to Russia, the Russian authorities distinguished native Jews from Russians. Since the largest Jewish community lived in Bukhara, all Jews of Central Asia began to be called Bukharian. This name persisted even in the Soviet years for the indigenous Jews from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, although it was rarely found in official documents. In the pre-war years, Central Asian Jews were called local or native, and after the war, documents often simply indicated Jews without specification. The main communities of Bukharian Jews in the 20th century were located in Bukhara, Samarkand, the cities of the Fergana Valley, and Tashkent. The self-designations of Central Asian Jews include the words Yehudi, Israel, and Jivut, reflecting their ethnic and religious identity. The population uses the ancient term Jugut, which originated during the Zoroastrian-Sasanian Persia era. This term reflects the centuries-old history and culture of the Jewish community in the region. The most famous Bukharian Jewish women of today are singers Nasiba Abdullayeva, Diana Sharapova, Narges Zakirova, dancer Malika Kalantarova, and actress Diana Yagofarova. Among the notable women are the wives of former presidents of Iceland and Turkmenistan, Dorit Musayeva and Musa Niyazova, who contributed to the development of the community and culture. According to the 1979 census, the number of Bukharian Jews in the Soviet Union by the early 1980s was about 40,000 people. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, immigration increased significantly, and many Bukharian Jews moved to Israel, the United States, Austria, and other countries. Currently, Jewish communities in Central Asia are on the verge of extinction due to numerous social and demographic factors. Today, Israel has the largest Bukharian Jewish community in the world, about 150,000 people preserving traditions and culture. About 60,000 Bukharian Jews live in the United States and Canada, actively maintaining their identity and traditions. How did Jews arrive in Central Asia? There are several theories and legends reflecting the ancient history of a community that is over 2,000 years old. According to one legend, the first Jews appeared in Central Asia even before the founding of Bukhara, more than 2,500 years ago, highlighting the deep roots of the community. The Persian king Cyrus the Great crushed Babylon and allowed the captive Jews to return to Judea, but some decided to stay in Persia, giving rise to Persian Jews. Thus, the Persian Jews were formed, some of whom later migrated to Central Asia, creating unique cultural traditions and preserving ancient customs. The tribes that joined the army of Cyrus the Great ended up in Bactria, in the territory of modern Afghanistan. When did they first appear in these lands? Already in the 1st century AD, in the Acts of the Apostles, Parthian Jews with their own language living in these lands are mentioned. In the 5th century Talmud, the Jewish community of Margwana, that is, the city of Merv, is discussed. There, Rabbi Shmuel bar Bizna did not recognize some drinks as kosher. He visited Merv, probably for trade reasons. In the period from 1954 to 1956, archaeologists found pre-Islamic Jewish inscriptions, ossuaries with inscriptions in Hebrew, such as Yosef bar Yaakov, were found. These artifacts date back to the 5th to 7th centuries AD. In the pre-Islamic period, there was also a Jewish community in Khwarezm. The Arab historian Al-Tabari mentions a Jewish sage during the siege of Khwarezm in 712. Researchers believe that Jews came to the region with trade caravans, settled and stayed, finding occupations in the new lands. There is a theory that Jews were brought to these lands during the Achaemenid era to develop the economy, which is confirmed by the ancient trade activity of the region. Historians also believe that after the defeat of the Sassanids in the 7th century, many refugees, including Jews, left the territory of modern Iran. These migrations and trade connections contributed to the formation of Jewish communities in Central Asia, which persisted for centuries. Bukharian Jews spoke and still speak the Bukharian language, which is a dialect of Farsi and a Jewish variant of the Tajik language. Modern science calls it Judeo-Tajik. The Bukharian Jews themselves sometimes call their language Bukhari. In the 1920s to 1930s, there were attempts to distinguish Bukhari as a separate language with its own grammar and script. A special script was created first in Latin, then translated into Cyrillic, although previously Jews wrote with Hebrew letters. This was an attempt to solidify the uniqueness of the language. By the late 1930s, the policy changed. Highlighting the Bukharian Jewish language was no longer considered appropriate, and the publication of books and newspapers in it ceased in the USSR. Bukharian Jews maintained connections with other Jewish communities. In the second half of the 19th century, many went on pilgrimages to Jerusalem, often elderly people. Bukharian Jews pray according to Eastern Sephardic prayer books, but many prayers are performed with traditional melodies, preserving the uniqueness of their religious practice. As in other Eastern communities, Bukharian Jews popularized Kabbalistic, mystical poetry in ancient Hebrew and Bukharian Jewish languages. In the Bukharian Emirate, the status of Jews was traditional for the Muslim world. They were considered people of the book under Islamic law, which provided certain protections. Christians and Jews were prohibited from being forcibly converted to Islam, but they paid a special tax, jizya, which was part of their status in Islamic society. In Bukhara, there were restrictions for non-Muslims regarding clothing and building heights. Forced conversions to Islam were forbidden, but misunderstandings and manipulations sometimes occurred. A Jew converted to Islam could not return back, as apostasy was punishable by death for a Muslim. It was a one-way path only. The Bukhara Jewish poem, Seven Brothers, is known, telling about forced conversion to Islam. Such cases were rare but real. In Bukhara, there was a community of newly converted Muslims, Chala, which in Tajik means neither this nor that. They secretly preserved some Jewish customs. Bukhara Jews lived in quarters, mahalla, where they engaged in typical crafts and economic niches, for example, dyeing fabric in blue, indigo. Gold embroidery was one of the traditional crafts of Bukhara Jews. Their tubatekas with golden ornamentation are known as symbols of skill and culture. Modernization among Bukhara Jews began before the Russian Revolution. Books published by Shimon Hoch started arriving from Jerusalem. In 1910, the merchant Rachim Davidbayev brought a printing press with Jewish font from Poland and began publishing the newspaper Rachim. In 1914, Davidbayev published the first Jewish book in Central Asia, a translation into Bukhara Jewish of tales from 1001 Nights. Then came the Soviet power. Socialist modernization began. But in the 1930s, many were arrested. Jewish schools and newspapers were closed. The local Jewish language was removed from the list of languages of the peoples of the USSR. It ceased to be officially used and disappeared from the educational system. In the 1970s, emigration of Soviet Jews to Israel began, including many Bukharian Jews who were seeking a new life. After the collapse of the USSR, emigration intensified. Jews left for the USA and Israel, where their cultural life began to flourish. In America, their own synagogues, schools, newspapers, and organizations appeared, including the World Congress of Bukharian Jews headed by Levi Leviev. The newspaper Bukharian Times is published in English, covering news and events of the Bukharian Jewish community. In America, there are many kosher restaurants with dishes such as shashlik, bukharan, pilaf bakhsh, flatbreads, and chebureki. Bukharian Jewish cuisine is similar to Uzbek and Tajik, but kashrut is observed. Neither dairy nor meat are cooked together. Pilaf in the Jewish version is called bakhsh, prepared with greens instead of carrots, giving it a unique taste and appearance. In Israel, Bukharian Jews are also active. They have their own cultural center with a museum where conferences and exhibitions are held. Books are published and awards are given, such as the Bukharian Jew of the Year, which supports and develops the traditions of this people.